Hey everybody, today's build, it's a one video build on making a retro collection playset for the Mandalorian retro figures. This is a finished shot. Now I've got a bunch of projects on the go at the moment, so this is how I built the base, but this isn't the base that I used on this one because I'd already done it at this stage. This was the second night. This is just using a thing called Agnew's water putty, which is a powder that you mix up with water, and then you just mould it, and when it's dry it's hard enough to sand and to drill through and do stuff with. So I was using it on a Shoretrooper build, which will be uploaded when I finished doing the Shoretrooper, but while I had leftover stuff I made some bases out of it. So this is after the base was made, I had embedded some items into it that I didn't make. So after the base was made I sanded it, and then the process is to coat it with latex rubber. This is a fine detail latex rubber, so do a coat of that, and then there's several coats of a brushable latex, which is a thicker latex rubber, until you've got enough coats to peel it away without it breaking. This is a lot cheaper than silicone. I wasn't sure how many of these I would make. I did want to replicate it a couple of times, but I didn't think I'd be making hundreds of them, so I didn't use silicone for this one, and as a result it's done alright. The other one, which is about to come up in a picture, that I also made, lasted literally for one mould and delaminated. So if you're going to do a long-term thing, it's better off to make it out of silicone. So this is a Stormtrooper head that I had made, and a vintage collection one. So I got an old vintage collection figure and made a silicone mould of him, and then plugged up the bottom so that I could have a head. And then I was making the fabric for the skirt that goes underneath him, the bit of fabric that hangs underneath him, and it didn't look right. I thought the original retro things are a lot chunkier. To make the moulds hold their shape a bit better, I got some expanding foam and put around them while they were still on the board, and that gives me a shell to put them in, so that when you put your plaster in, your resin into them, they don't deform. So with this one I tried to colour the resin with a non-standard colour, and don't do it because it makes it go bubbly. So you can watch as these turn light brown and go like muffins and spill up over the top. So I learnt from that one that if you're going to colour resin, absolutely use the real thing. When they'd come out of the moulds, because they puffed up, I sanded them again to make them a bit flatter and to not be so thick. I'd also poured 2 resin ones at this stage, so that mould works really well, and it gives me a pretty good reproduction. The only issue that I've had was that the bit around the back where the paper is the cardboard back is supposed to go, wasn't really deep enough, and it had a few chunks in it, so I had to get a Dremel and Dremel it out a little bit. At the moment I'm just making the, what do you call them? The little pegs that the figures stand on. So I've drilled a hole into the base of the unit and then got a nail that's exactly the right width for the figure, and super glued it in place, and it'll be the same colour when it's finished. I did actually put one in on the mould, but it doesn't ever register, so the resin doesn't get into it. It's probably air bubble or something that causes that to not be good. So Dremeled out on all of the models the channel for where the paper's going to go, through the little cardboard scene in the background, which is the standard for all the 1970s playsets, and just tidied up each of the moulds, got rid of any of the daggy bits that I didn't like the look of. Now while everything of this was happening, I was actually working in Affinity Photo to make a backdrop. So that's how it ended up, and I went and had it printed at Officeworks just for the fun of it, and did it on 200 gram paper so that it sticks out a bit better. I decided to redo the Stormtrooper, the fabric bit that hangs underneath it, and make it more chunky. The figures from the time, if you have a look at Obi-Wan's clothing and anybody that's got a drapey sort of costume, Princess Leia a little bit, the figures from the 1970s, the Kenner ones, are a lot more chunky and they weren't as detailed as the ones from later things. So I redid it, and here's some photos coming up about how it ended up. So it's a lot chunkier to look like the thing, and then I decided to go to the effort of making a silicone mould for this one. So it's glue him down upside down, and with his child safety spike, the knob on the end of it works for letting the air in and makes it safe. So after I had measured out the silicone rubber, so it's silicone and then it's a catalyst that makes it go off, and after I'd measured that correctly, it was then a matter of pouring it in to fill up the mould, making sure you don't get air bubbles. So I pour from a really big height with a thin stream, and it generally lets the air bubbles out. This did really well. It did actually make a really good reproduction of the figure. In the end, that little air hole wasn't enough to let the resin in and the air out, so I had to cut another channel in the silicone, and so that created a little bit of flash, but the flash was conveniently placed near the helmet and on the edge of the helmet, and it breaks off, and then trimming around the extra little bit that you get means that it tidies up, and they're a really good reproduction. I'm very, very happy with the way that they've turned out, and they really do look the part. I spent a little bit of time, just all I had to do was really cut the notch back in where the helmet's damaged above the eye, but other than that it was just slicing off the flashy bits and breaking them off, and that didn't take hardly any time at all, as you can see. As you might have noticed, I had taken the bases out and painted them spray painted them yellow, which is pretty much what used to happen in the 70s. Most of the playsets were either yellow, orange, grey or white, depending upon where they took place, on which planet they were trying to reproduce and show you. And so I opted for the yellow spray can that I could get at the time. So after I'd cleaned these up, the only thing that was left to do to them was drill a hole for the rod. And although I had drilled a hole in the original one, and they reproduced okay, the hole wasn't very deep. I just wanted it to be a guide. So then I got the same drill. You can see there that they've turned out pretty much identical. And all I have to do is drill out that bit in the base, paint the stick white to match, the little rod white to match, and then assemble it all together. So I got my printing from Officeworks and I cut one of them out, and then I've assembled it in a little bit, not very much longer. This is just the final drilling out of the bits and pieces. So with the stick in it, there it is. It comes up pretty funky, but it really comes together with the card in the back. And so just after, from here on in, there's a walk around, just showing you the finished product with Mando stuck on it for your pleasure. So this is how it looks when you stick your figure on his little peg and stands in. It's come up really good. I hope everybody that gets one of these has a big kick out of it, because I had a lot of fun doing it and everything turned out the way that it should. Following after this little bit is, like I said, there's been lots of projects on. I've had a bunch of things that I've been doing, and I'll just show you the photos for them because there aren't going to be videos on those. I've been working on a Shoretrooper, which will be the next video that I released. I've done the full build of it, so all the painting, all the construction, everything's been videoed. But because I was doing 5 things at once, I've been on holidays, and then I got an extra week of COVID lockdown. So yeah, this is what I did on my holidays, and I hope that you have enjoyed the watching of it. I had extra silicone left over one day, and I needed to find something to do before it went off, so I pulled a Tauntaun body apart and decided to make Tauntaun heads that you can mount on your wall for all of those trophy hunters that have been out hunting Tauntauns. Again, no Tauntaun was injured in the making of this thing. And then the other thing that I had time to do was make an Admiral Akbar in carbonite, because I don't think the end of Admiral Akbar was blown out into space. I think the rebels cobbled together a very quick carbon freezing unit and saved Admiral Akbar to be brought back to us sometime in the future. So he's reproduced really, really well too, and I've painted him up a little bit, and this is just how he comes. But it's only the techniques that you've seen today. He was silicon rubber. The next thing that I will be doing is the Shoretrooper, and this is a garden ornament that I've souped up to be a Shoretrooper leader, and there'll be a full video of that the next time. So I hope you're looking forward to that, and I hope you really enjoyed this video. It's only a short one today, the whole build, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time I'm uploading something else.